Recently, there's been a lot of buzz around the upcoming villains-themed land for the Magic Kingdom, and everyone seems very opinionated about the rumors circulating online. Disney first announced Villains Land at D23 in 2024, and the concept art they provided was so blue sky that it became clear that they announced this without any actual plans for what they were going to do. For example, there appears to be a Maleficent-themed roller coaster that looks like it has track from Rocky Mountain Construction. You know, like Iron Rattler or Iron Gwazi. But obviously, Disney was never going to build anything like this in one of their parks, especially not Magic Kingdom. That would have been really bold of them to do though. Like, I wonder how this would have worked out if they actually planned to build Iron Maleficent or whatever. Anyways, Disney likes to announce things without any solid plans for what they're going to do, which actually started with another D23 announcement of Piston Peak for Magic Kingdom, but the concept art featured buildings from Disneyland Paris' Frontierland, which I think reinforces my point that Disney just announces IP presence in the parks, throws together sloppy concept art, and then figures it out later. The reason that Villains Land rumors are flying around the internet right now is because of a statement made by Len Testa on the WDW Magic forums, where he essentially stated that initial plans for the land had been discarded, and Imagineering was asked to enhance and scale up the land significantly. The internet took this to mean that the new incoming Disney CEO, Josh D'Amaro, was making his first big creative move in trying to fix the lackluster direction that the parks have been taking under Iger and Chapek, but Testa specifically states that he doesn't know where this directive originated, and it could very well not have come from D'Amaro either, even though he was previously head of Parks and Resorts. As the president of touringplans.com, Testa has a lot of good sources to back up his information, but I'm still skeptical of the idea that someone came in and dramatically upscaled Villains Land, because, well, it's clear that Disney never had a plan to begin with when they announced it less than 2 years ago, and that actual development is very recent. I think that Testa's statement was just something that got distorted through a game of telephone, where original Blue Sky plans were upscaled immediately after the announcement, and there's no scenario where Josh came in sometime over the past few months and asked Imagineering to scrap their current plans to make the land bigger and better when building permits for the land have already been filed. Disney is at the stage where it has already spent money on materials to begin constructing these buildings, and has put in orders with ride manufacturers, and so the likelihood of these plans changing dramatically seems incredibly unlikely. However, with the internet abuzz around Testa's forum post, an article was published by The Wrap, making the explicit statement that D'Amaro had in fact scrapped Villains Land plans coming into 2026, and that the new plans had a number of attractions that the author of the article, Drew Taylor, was privy to. So, in this video, I wanted to explore what these rumored attractions might be, while also sharing my thoughts on the apparent failure of Dark Universe at Epic Universe, which is by far the least popular area of that park. Villains Land was inevitably going to be heavily compared to Dark Universe, and a lot of people are even under the impression that Disney went forward with Villains Land specifically because of Universal. So I think it's relevant to talk about why that land always appears to be empty, and why Disney will likely go in a more whimsical and family-friendly direction for Villains Land, to the disappointment of many. So please leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's talk about why Disney's Villains Land is probably going to be the victim of expectations that it was never going to live up to. Going back to the article published on The Wrap, Drew Taylor claims to have sources that confirmed that Testa's statement was true, and that D'Amaro asked Imagineering to draw up new plans for the land that would later go to the board for approval sometime this year. According to Taylor, the original Villains Land would have been centered around the roller coaster seen in the concept art, and would have been pretty intense for a Disney park. Instead, the new rumored plans would have a much tamer coaster, think Slinky Dog Dash, themed to the Emperor's New Groove, with a pull the lever crunk moment. The new plans also include an ambitious Maleficent dark ride that Taylor claims would use the boat system from Shanghai's version of Pirates of the Caribbean, along with a spinning flat ride themed to Ursula, and a Hades dinner show that seems to showcase different villains, replacing what would have been a different full-service dining experience themed to Madame Medusa from The Rescuers. Do I believe these rumors? No, I really don't, especially since I doubt that Disney would ever seriously consider putting a thrill coaster in their parks that's more intense than Rock and Roller Coaster. But in addition to that, what strikes me as weird about these rumored plans is that they seem very out of character for Disney in terms of IP choices. We know that as it currently exists, Disney is risk-adverse to a fault, where every attraction is heavily based on the strength of intellectual property with minimal creative risk taken. While The Emperor's New Groove has become a bit of a cult classic within the Disney film library, I'm skeptical that the company would create a major attraction themed to this property, or even consider a Madame Medusa restaurant, which I think is a villain that is so obscure that even hardcore Disney film fans might not know who she is. On the other hand, despite my skepticism, if any version of these plans are real, that in itself could signal an interesting creative shift in the parks under Tomorrow, possibly leading into future parks projects that lead by design rather than the safe nature of an IP. A lot of people are under the impression that Disney parks will continue their same course under Tomorrow, as he's a safe corporate pick for the leader of the company. And in his brief time as head of parks and resorts, the strategy of destroying park theming in favor of dumping random properties everywhere has not changed. You have Piston Peak running the rugged nature of Frontierland, there's the new Avatar ride and an Avengers Campus expansion coming to a park themed to California, a Disney Plus IP land going into Animal Kingdom disguised as Tropical Americas, and you have Disney Adventure World and all the random nonsense going in there. The Six Flagsification of Disney parks has only accelerated under Tomorrow, and maybe it could be the case that under Iger, Tomorrow was not able to push forward any other type of project anyways, but I really do think it's going to be more of the same. If it is true that the new Villains Land is considering including more obscure characters and properties, then despite my skepticism of the validity of the claim, it could signal that Tomorrow is moving away from the very safe, risk-adverse mindset of corporate Disney, and is maybe willing to move the parks in a more creatively driven direction in the future. I very much doubt it, but if these rumors turn out to be true, then maybe this is a good thing. What's also interesting about these rumored plans is that they are apparently a direct reaction to Epic Universe. While Taylor claims that the original Villains Land was darker and more akin to Dark Universe, he also states that Disney has been influenced by the wild success of the Isle of Berk, with villains now moving in a lighter, more family-friendly direction based on Berk's mass appeal. If this is true, then why is Dark Universe considered the wrong creative direction? Objectively, this is the least popular land at Epic Universe, which isn't to say that it's a failure, but why is it that when the park is fairly busy, you'll consistently see Monsters Unchained at a 15 or 20 minute wait? This ride is certainly highly regarded among the theme park community as one of the best ever built, but it's clear that the general park crowds are not flocking here, and are instead waiting 2 hours for Mario Kart or even 3 for Battle with the Ministry. So the question is, why? Well, I think there's a few different reasons, and the first is simply capacity. Monsters Unchained has a high rider throughput, probably somewhere over 2,000 people an hour, and with a tendency to be more reliable than other attractions in the park, it's just a massive people eater. That plays a big role in keeping its wait time lower than most other attractions, but even so, I think it's still objectively less popular than other areas of the park. Simply put, Nintendo and Potter are the big IP draws for general crowds who will prioritize those attractions and lands first. And when they spend all their time there, it makes sense why Dark Universe is getting less foot traffic. On top of this, while I don't think that the land or its rides are actually scary at all, Universal certainly marketed them this way, and families with younger kids are more likely to avoid this land because of that, prioritizing pretty much everything else, and probably gravitating towards spending a lot of time in Berk because of its clear family-friendly design. Dark Universe is certainly not a failure for the park, but with all of these factors combined, it gives the impression that the land is not drawing people in, and if Disney is taking that as a lesson, then I think it certainly speaks to how badly they still continue to misunderstand the theme park experience. While I predicted that Dark Universe might be a creative risk for Universal in a past video, what I didn't expect was the overwhelming popularity of the Isle of Berk. The How to Train Your Dragon films certainly made a cultural impact, but before the park opened, this land seemed like it would be the least interesting and would have the lowest foot traffic. However, with a fantastic family coaster, an ambitious indoor show, and plenty of kineticism, roaming characters, and cool details found throughout the land, Berk started as an underdog and might actually now be the most highly rated land in the park. It may very well be the case that Disney executives saw such overwhelmingly positive feedback and decided to move Villains Land in a more family-friendly direction because of it. But really, do we actually believe that this claim was ever true? Was there ever really a scenario where Disney villains weren't going to be family-friendly in the Magic Kingdom? The concept art with Iron Maleficent was clearly just thrown together, and judging from the new show at Hollywood Studios, Disney Villains Unfairly Ever After, the emphasis was always going to be on this campier, more family-friendly interpretation. It's also very much in line with Disney removing attractions that were considered scary in the parks, from replacing Snow White's Scary Adventures in Magic Kingdom and sanitizing it in Disneyland, to converting California's Tower of Terror into Guardians of the Galaxy, and to failing to preserve the aspect of building up anticipation for Splash Mountain's drop with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which contains nothing that builds any tension. I really just don't believe the claim that Villains Land was ever going to be dark, and the villain show at Hollywood Studios was clearly thrown together very quickly. I think because Disney wanted to test audience reception for what is essentially a villain's musical. If you wanted Villains Land to be more intense, with more thrilling rides and a darker or edgier theme, I just don't really think that was ever in the cards, because it's just not what Disney does. So whatever the plan for this land may be, whether it was family friendly from the beginning, or whether Tomorrow really is pushing for a new vision, what will that look like for the park? And will it end up being disappointing? Assume for a moment that the rumors from the Wrap are true. What would that look like, and would it benefit the Magic Kingdom? If the plan is to build an Emperor's New Groove roller coaster, while I don't think that the theme is inherently bad, in fact, I actually like the idea of using a lesser-known film, the issue is the intent behind the coaster layout itself. Disney has already built Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and Slinky Dog Dash, two coasters that I think are just incredibly underwhelming through their lack of thrill, and also happen to have poor capacity for the crowds that they draw. When I point out how awful these coaster layouts are, people always retort that the intended audience is young children who might be getting on a roller coaster for the first time. But when you have track layouts with absolutely no thrill aspect to them, I would argue that defeats the purpose of a roller coaster. If you're looking for a good introductory coaster, Goofy's Barnstormer is the perfect pick, because while it's small and not very fast, it still provides decent forces that are a good first step into the coaster world, in a way that Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and Slinky are just not. It's also worth noting that if this coaster is inspired by Berk, Hiccup's Wing Gliders is a significantly more thrilling family coaster, which means that Disney executives might continue to be missing the point. The launches on Hiccups feel powerful, and the lateral Gs and frequent pops of airtime make it a much more exciting experience than I think Disney would be willing to build. Assuming the Emperor's New Groove coaster is real, I think that while it might be a huge hit with toddlers, it might get ridiculous waits because of that. Ultimately, it will be another creative failure that most people will consider to be underwhelming. Moving over to the Maleficent boat ride, I think that in itself is an interesting idea, but I'm not confident that Disney will put the right level of investment into it to make it the true e-ticket that it should be. When Shanghai Disneyland opened with its version of Pirates of the Caribbean, I was really impressed with the ride technology, its 4 animatronics, and the quality of the screens. But this is also very much a ride from 2016 that I don't think aged very well. I haven't experienced it myself, so take this with a grain of salt, but I think its design has aged very quickly, and it's just not acceptable to build a ride this bare bones any longer, where you blow the budget on just a few animatronics. It seems that Disney might have learned this lesson with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, with its quantity of animatronics populating its scenes, but otherwise, Disney doesn't really invest in their own parks in the way they should. If you look at what they developed for the Oriental Land Company with the Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast, or Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey for the Tokyo parks, those put to shame anything that Disney has built for the parks that they actually own. Rise of the Resistance looks even more underwhelming when compared to the clever effects and high-budget scenes found throughout these rides, and even Epic Universe is pushing ride design forward with Monsters Unchained and Battle with the Ministry in a way that I don't think that Disney can match. I would like to be optimistic and say that a Maleficent boat ride should meet the quality of the Tokyo parks, but I think it would likely just be more screens with a few animatronics, half of which are broken every time you ride. As for the other attractions, like the Ursula-themed spinner, does Magic Kingdom really need a 5th aerial carousel? Would Disney leadership actually be insane enough to do that? And a Hades dinner show sounds cool on the surface, but will it actually be a showcase of different villains who will revel in their evil? Or will it be like the show in Hollywood studios, which is noise for the sake of noise, and employs 3 actors because Disney is too cheap to pay people? I like the idea of Villains Land, but unless tomorrow can move the Disney parks in a creatively driven direction, I have a feeling that this land is going to disappoint everyone, whether the rumors are true or not. It's clear that Tomorrow announced this land without any vision for what it would be, and while things may change now that Iger is gone, I'm still not optimistic that Villains Land will deliver to people's expectations, because I still think that Disney views their parks as billboards for IP, and not as actual theme parks worth investing creativity into. I know that I'm just the cynical voice, and that Disney could very well pull off something incredible with this land, but I doubt it. And with this video, I wanted to weigh in and tell you to keep your expectations in check. As always, if you want to support the discourse in this video, or the channel more broadly, you can help me out by leaving a like if you haven't already done so. If you haven't subscribed and hit the bell notification yet either, you can also do so now to be alerted to new videos as they're released.